Welcome to Eastrose Fellowship. I'm Phyllis Adams, your program leader for this morning, and Reverend Catharine Clarenbach is our speaker today. She comes to us from Southeast Portland, the home of her largely online ministry called The Way of the River. If you haven't already done so, please silence all cell phones and other devices and join us now in worship. Our chalice lighter today is Olivia Collins. And Olivia today is going to finish her Lego scooter. And she's working on checking out a special cherry dessert that she and her mom made.
As Olivia lights this chalice, we are reminded of the single light of love, truth, justice, and peace that lives in the hope of all people. And here we are in the household of earth, held close by gravity with all other members, beings and peoples of the household of earth. Come, let us be in worship together.
First, a little housekeeping information. The service is televised to the minister's office. Should you need to leave the chapel for any reason, you can continue to see and hear the service from there. One of our greeters can show you where the minister's office is. Here at Eastrose, we minister to all ages. Our young people join us for the first part of the service and will shortly leave to attend their own religious exploration classes and activities. Also, if a child remaining in the service becomes restless, you're invited to make use of the minister's office, or if they're under the age of 4, you may visit the nursery with them at any time. Now I'd like to call your attention to the opportunities for participation printed in your program. Please take some time to look over those and read them. I also have one other announcement. Really important. Next Saturday, join us, Cleanup Day, 9 to 1, with a potluck. What fun. Visitors, I'd like to extend a special welcome to anyone who's here for the first time, and invite you to briefly introduce yourself if you wish. And if you haven't already done so, please sign the guest book at the greeters table so that we can send you our newsletter. We hope you'll return to a Sunday service with us soon. And we invite everyone to stay after the service for conversation, coffee, and tea. Now, let's take a moment to turn and greet our neighbors. I always hate to turn that off because for some of us that's our favorite time of the service. But please continue the conversations over coffee after the service. And now I'd invite you to rise in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are. We'll sing it through 2 times. In just a moment, I'll ask the children in our congregation to come forward for a story. As they come up, they're invited to place their change in the little jar on the altar. 4 times a year, the children put their faith into action using a democratic process to determine the local nonprofit recipient of the money. And now it's time for our story. Would the young people please come up, and we will hear about Khadijah, the first wife of the Prophet Muhammad. Don't tell me Olivia's it.
There's one over here coming.
Oh, good. Yay. Okay, you can sit. Well, this is a story for all ages. So you sit there, and it doesn't matter that we don't have critical mass because we have quality here. Okay, once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away. Oh, no, that's not right. Because this is a really true story about a remarkable woman named Khadijah. I'm having a little trouble with that name, so all of you can correct me each time. Well, Khadijah was born in Mecca a long, long time ago. In fact, almost 1,500 years ago. And her family was very wealthy. They had a business. They were running a caravan, and they had camels, and they would load up their camels and send them off to other cities to trade for silks and maybe fine perfumes and incense and spices, salt, all sorts of exciting things. So they were very important people in Mecca, and they were wealthy. So Khadijah didn't really have to work. She could have been a lady of leisure her whole life. But let's don't bother with that, please. We're not going to fool with that, okay? Should I stand on it? Okay. Well, anyway, Khadijah wasn't that kind of a person, though. She was very intelligent and such a hard worker and diligent, and she loved business. She wanted to do something. Oh, don't put it in your mouth. And she decided that she would be a part of the business. In fact, when her daddy died, she was the person who took over the family business and ran the business. And in the meantime, she also got married and had children, and her husband died. And then she got married and had children, and her husband died again. And Khadijah was really worn out with having husbands die, and she decided that she wanted to just concentrate on making the business good and taking care of her children and raising them. And the other thing that Khadijah did, she was very generous and compassionate, and she gave lots of money to people in need. And she would help out her relatives and widows and orphans and anybody who needed a little help. Well, when Khadijah was finally about 40 years old, she was known all over Arabia because she was such an honest, hardworking, diligent person, and everyone respected her. Well, she had a lot of people working for her, you can imagine, with caravans like this. But there was one person that she needed to hire, and that's the agent. Now, the agent is the most important job in the caravans, because can you imagine what an agent would do? The agents had to go out with the caravans. You see, Khadijah, she stayed home with her children and ran the business, but she sent the agent out. Not only did the agent have to manage all the money, all the workers, and keep the caravan safe from bandits along the way, it was a really responsible and important job. And she wasn't going to give that job to just anybody, so she asked around. And she found out that there was this really honest, trustworthy, respectable young man. He was only 25, but she thought, you know, I've heard so many good things about him. His name was Muhammad, so she hired him to be her agent. And sure enough, he did a wonderful job. And when he came back, she got glowing reports about what a good job he had done. Well, she thought, you know, this guy's a keeper. I think I'm going to hire him permanently. But you know, after a while, she says, not only is he a keeper, but I kind of like him a whole lot. And I'm going to ask him to marry me. Well, can you imagine a woman asking the guy to marry her? Well, Khadijah did. And lo and behold, he said yes. Now, she was quite a bit older than he was. But that was okay, because they had this wonderful relationship, and they were just devoted to each other. They had 6 children and had a successful business and lived happily for 15 years and lived happily ever after. Do you think that's the end of the story? Oh, no, because remember, this isn't a make-believe story. This is a true story. So after 15 years, something really happened, something strange that upset their whole life. You see, Muhammad, he was 40 then, and he liked to go off. You know how some of your parents need a quiet place to go meditate sometimes?
Sometimes maybe the bathroom or any place you can find to be alone.
Right. Well, Muhammad would go up to the hills, and there was a cave. And he would go there and meditate from time to time. Well, one day when he was there meditating, lo and behold, the angel Gabriel came and spoke to him with a message from God. Oh no, this is the same angel that you've heard about in the Bible, you know, that shows up whenever God wants to send a message to somebody. You remember the shepherds in the field, and the angel shows up and says, get yourself down to Bethlehem because you need to see the baby Jesus. Well, it's that same angel. And the angel said, I have this message from God. Well, Muhammad was so freaked out, he listened to the message, and he was just terrified. So he went running home just as fast as his legs would carry him and burst into the house. Khadijah, help! I need help. I think I'm losing my mind. I think I'm sick. I saw a ghost. And Khadijah calmed him down. She probably gave him something cool to drink and said, tell me all about it. And he says, Allah has commanded me to preach that there should be only one God, and a whole bunch of other things about how we should live and treat each other. And Khadijah says, that's not something to be afraid of. That's a blessing. And from now on, you're going to preach, and you're going to go out and spend all your time preaching, and I'll run the business.
And what happened to my leg?
Oh my goodness. That's maybe what happened to Muhammad when he was running, do you think? Uh-huh. So he did. He preached and for a long time, but that made people nervous. And pretty soon the city leaders got nervous and they said, I don't want these Muhammad and his followers. They're getting to be too many people paying attention to him. We're going to get them out of here. Okay, Olivia, I want you to come up here and check out the silks and things.
Can I do?
Yes, you can too. Because what happened, they sent all the Muslims out of town and told them they couldn't come back. For 3 years they kept them out of town, and they had to live in this terrible ravine where there wasn't proper shelter, and they didn't have enough food because that nobody was allowed to trade with them. Well, Khadijah spent all her fortune, and when they finally came back, she was a very old woman, and she was so worn out that she died. But, you know, that's sort of the end of the story, except that some years later, the Prophet Muhammad said, she believed in me when no one else did. She accepted Islam when people rejected me, and she helped and comforted me when there was no one else to lend a helping hand. This was how Khadijah became the first convert to Islam and remained Muhammad's most staunch believer, ally, and friend through her whole life. Okay, guys, what do you think? Would you like to go on a caravan?
No.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't either. Think of the flies and things. All right, if the people on the aisle would stand and make a bridge, and let's get ready to go. We hold you in our love as you go, as you go. May your heart be at peace as you go. To nurture the spark of your precious life. We hold you in our love as you go. And now it's the time when we share the joys and concerns that are on our hearts and minds this week. I invite you to share those joys and concerns with the compassionate circle of this community. Please be brief so there's time for everyone to share. And please wait for the microphone so that all can hear.
I'm Larry, and I have a joy that this week we were able to finish the fence. The dilapidated, broken down fence was removed and replaced, and we now have a very nice fence. I want to thank John Wygant and Michael and Eric and Dean Knox for a fantastic team put it together.
Hi, my name is Joyce. I have a concern. I have a good friend who has a very difficult situation at work that is literally making him sick. Mm-hmm. And not quite sure what the resolution will be, but in the meantime, he's having a really difficult time. So, thoughts for Marty.
Okay, Marty. Anyone else? One of our fence builders.
Two joys. A visit from my sister from Tasmania, and my daughter graduated from Portland State University.
Woo! Wonderful.
I'm Lynn, and I know Ron's too modest, so he won't say anything, but we were in North Carolina in Charlotte at the Heroes Con, and it was a blast, and we also were able to visit with some friends there. We went on a carriage tour of historical Charlotte, and that was really cool. Saw some museums, and we also did the convention, which went very well. So, and it also braced us for the heat here, which was good. Segue.
I just need to share the best detail of the weekend was the carriage ride we went was a horse-drawn carriage, and the horse's name was Fabio.
Anybody else? Okay, well, for all of these shared joys and concerns, let's keep them in our hearts. And now, if you'll rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn 123. When we collect the offering, half our cash collection each week goes to an organization performing charitable works in our community. This month, our Sunday basket is shared with the Doogie Center. More information about this organization is in today's program. Each week, we lift up the spiritual value of generosity by taking an offering for this haven, this refuge, this place of worship and wonder. This fellowship exists because we make it so with our contributions, the gifts of our time, our skills, our food, our love, our laughter, and our money. If you're a first-time visitor, please be our guest and let the basket pass. Your presence is your gift to us today.
Thank you, Tom. In the interest of time, I'm going to only read our second reading, There's Nothing Ahead, by Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi. Lovers think they're only looking for each other, but there's only one search. Wandering this world is wandering that world, both inside one transparent sky. In here, there is no dogma and no heresy. The miracle of Jesus is himself, not what he said or did about the future. Forget the future. I'd worship someone who could do that. On the way, you may want to look back or not. But if you can say, there's nothing ahead, there will be nothing there. Stretch your arms and take hold the cloth of your clothes with both hands. The cure for pain is in the pain. Good and bad are mixed. If you don't have both, you don't belong with us. When one of us gets lost, is not here, they must be inside us. There's no other place like that anywhere in the world. I invite you to stand as you're so moved and join us in singing hymn number 6, Just as Long as I Have Breath.
With
through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love. Our meditation begins with a short poem from another Sufi Muslim, Hafiz. After I read the poem, I invite us into just a few moments of silence to consider what the poem had to say to us, each of us in our hearts. The poem is called It Felt Love. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. May the meditations of our hearts be fruitful and carry us through the days ahead. When I began thinking of what I would write my sermon about for this week, I thought, well, it's the perfect day to talk about the end of Ramadan, the Muslim month of fasting. Today is Eid al-Fitr, the day of breaking the fast, and it began at sundown last night. And so I intended to speak about fasting, and I will speak a little bit about fasting, but anti-Muslim violence in our area, in other parts of the country, and violence committed in Brussels by a Muslim man have led me to a larger picture of what this sermon needed to be. So my apologies for not giving you enough fasting today. I must give thanks and honor first to the people who have taught me about Ramadan and about Islam, about Eid al-Fitr. Jamila Tharp is a UU theologian, ministerial candidate, and a Sufi Muslim imam. Dr. Imad al-Din Ahmad was my professor at a Methodist seminary who taught about Islam. Dai Abdullah is the first openly gay imam known to have come out and done his work in the world. Mark Silver, my Sufi teacher, and Ibrahim Farajage, may his life be for a blessing, who was on the faculty at our UU seminary, Star King School for the Ministry, until his death. But maybe even more than these people, I give thanks for the first Muslim I knew. I probably knew somebody before her, but the first Muslim I knew, I met in the 9th grade. She was a Pakistani girl, and she wore a hijab, one of the kinds of head coverings that many Muslim women wear, though not all. We sat together at lunch because we were both shunned and bullied by other students. And so we struck up a friendship. I give thanks for you, whose name I no longer remember, for being my 9th grade lunch friend, for your hijab, which I had never seen on a woman before, for your gracious explanations, for your openness. And I say to her and to all of us, Eid Mubarak. Repeat it after me. Eid Mubarak. Blessings of the festival. That is what we share today. Today, I wish you blessings of both the feast and the fast. This festival is a family gathering of many people feasting and sharing and giving gifts after a month of Ramadan. For observant Muslims, fasting from food, drink, and sex throughout the daylight hours of the month of Ramadan is one of the holiest and most important of the 5 pillars of the faith. From sunup to sundown each day. Now, this is really important. The Muslim calendar is figured out with lunar months, which means that Ramadan moves throughout the year. When Ramadan falls over the summer solstice, our Muslim neighbors and cousins are fasting for long days. Yeah. So on this festival day, I invite those of us who are not Muslim to accept that we probably have limited understanding and to aspire to new understanding that leads to welcome of our religious cousins. I pray for a welcome that can lead to inclusion. I pray all these things in the context of anti-Muslim violence, violence among Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Israel, Palestine, a bombing by a Muslim in Brussels, and here, in our very own area, the harassment of 2 young Muslim women of color and the 3 men who came to their aid and were stabbed. So this is my context: gratitude, violence, and observance of fast and feast. So if we think about Ramadan, a time of Muslim fasting, it also reminds me of other religions that practice fasting. How many of you have some experience with Roman Catholicism? A few. I grew up Roman Catholic, and in my house we practiced Lenten fasts during the 40 days before Easter. I think, too, of Yom Kippur and the days of awe in Judaism, and of religious and secular political resistance that is often accompanied by fasting. So during Ramadan, for observant Muslims, healthy adult observant Muslims, fasting is required. But just as there are observant, not very observant, and not at all observant members of other religions, so too in Islam. So people observe Ramadan in different ways. Not everyone does it in the particular prescribed way that is the most perhaps conservative or particular way. But one of the ways to get at Ramadan is to think about a consideration of the Muslim relationship with God called zikr, or remembrance in English. Zikr is a central practice, especially in the Sufi tradition. Hafiz and Rumi, whom we read, were Sufis. My friend Jamila Tharp, who will be ordained UU this year, is also Sufi. And they practice zikr. It is the relationship to Allah, that is to say God, or the real, the source of love, mercy, compassion, courage, and justice. Zikr is remembrance developed through prayer and meditation on 99 different names for God. It's central, and I find this fascinating, so I hope you do too. It's fascinating to me because the idea of original sin, which is so prevalent in some Christian traditions, is not Muslim. They don't have that idea. The central problem for humanity in Islam is forgetfulness. And so it's not original sin, it's original absent-mindedness, right? So fasting, for example, is not undertaken because the flesh is evil. It is not the misleading idea of the mortification of the flesh. What motivates Ramadan is remembrance. Remembrance of who we are, to whom we belong, whatever that means to us. Are we servants of the one, the real, the universe, God? Do we serve hope for humanity and for earth? Do we devote ourselves to justice and peace? To whom, to what do we belong? What do you need to remember about yourself? What do I? So fasting in the Muslim tradition is also, as it is in some Christian traditions, linked to charitable giving, giving to those who are recognized to be living in poverty, particularly those in the Ummah, or the Muslim community. So rather than separating Islam from other traditions, fasting really connects it to other traditions. And it is one, as I mentioned, of the 5 pillars of the Muslim faith. As we have 7 principles, Islam has 5 pillars, 5 parts of doctrine or actions to be taken. And what is the first one? It is a creed, and it's very short. It's the shortest one I know. Muslims, whether Muslim UUs or others, such as mainline, Sunni, Shia, or Sufi Muslims, make one simple, solemn profession of faith. Roughly, it begins, "There is no God but God." My Sufi friends say, "There is no reality but God. There is no oneness but God." And so it goes on, "There is no oneness but God, and Muhammad is God's prophet. There is no reality but God, and Muhammad is God's prophet." That's it. But this seeming simple statement of faith has a host of other implications, because of course, if Muhammad is God's prophet, and Muslims consider him the last prophet, then what he brought to earth from the angel Gabriel, the Quran, must also be true. So while the profession of faith is simple, it has other implications. So one thing important to say here, and you'll see it come up again and again, and you already have in what I've said, is that there are many ways of interpreting what is in the Quran. Just as there are many ways of interpreting what is in the Hebrew Bible or the New Testament or the Vedas or the Bhagavad Gita, there are many ways of engaging with the Quran. So what I mean by that is that Islam is no more monolithic than any other religion. So let's consider some other religions for a moment. Christianity, just to pick one. In the 11th century, long after the early Jewish Christian communities had broken into various sects, the Eastern and Western Christian churches split, becoming the Orthodox and Roman traditions. Change after change after change, Reformation after Reformation after counter-Reformation after anti-Reformation has brought us a myriad of Christian traditions. And then, pardon me, there are people called Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, also called followers of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And they are often not considered to be Christians, even though they have Jesus in their name, which I think is really interesting. Many Christians don't consider them Christians, and many of them, don't consider all those other Christians to be Christians. And so, in some traditions of Christianity and Judaism, as well as in Islam, women cover their heads, especially during worship. In some traditions of Christianity and Judaism, as well as in Islam, women are essentially covered head to toe. In some version of all these religions, women may generally be held to a double standard, a higher standard of modesty than men are held to. These variations in practice, and I learned this from my mainline Sunni teacher, Dr. Ahmad, differences in practice often have more to do with local custom that developed over time, differences in politics, differences in pre-Islamic traditions. So there are 7 ways that observant Muslim women cover their heads or their bodies, and none of them are exactly prescribed in the Quran. Muslim is not a monolithic person. Islam is not a monolithic religion. So I invite us to think about the story we heard about Khadijah, a woman of power, of intelligence, of faith, who asked a 20-year younger than herself, a man 20 years her junior, to marry her. And he was monogamous and faithful with her until her death. I invite us to consider the vast number of Muslim voices throughout the world, calling for different things, different ideals, different versions of what Islam means in and for the world. Islamist states, Muslims for progressive values, Da'i Abdullah, who I mentioned, and Dr. Ahmad all have completely different ideas about what it means to be a Muslim in the modern world, or the postmodern world, I should say. So if I were to put, say, a whiteboard up there, because we wouldn't use dry erase markers on the wall. If I were to put a whiteboard up there and think about sort of what comes to mind for us, I bet we would have a really mixed bag. Would we think of the 5 pillars of practice? Would we think of oppression by others of Muslims? Would we think of oppression of others by Muslims? Would we think of mysticism? Would we think of misogyny? Would we think of anti-Semitism? Would we think of pluralism and oneness? So what comes to mind is complex. The reality of religious life in the world is complex. And if anything is showing us that right now, it's what's going on in Unitarian Universalism right now. Many things are true even in one community. And as Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker has said, let us encourage ourselves to hold, to intentionally and intensely hold ambiguity. Let us insist on not carrying one answer, the easy answer. Remember, remembrance of truth is complex, even though we may believe in some idea of ultimate truth as one. Is it true, I wonder, that Islam is a religion of peace? Yes and no. The Quran has problematic passages in it, and passage after passage of gorgeous pluralism, phenomenal metaphors of light and of darkness, peace and community building. Is it true that Judaism is a religion of justice? Yes and no. The books of Joshua and Judges in the Hebrew Bible are filled with hundreds more instances of horrific violence than are in the entire Quran. Is it true that Christianity is a religion of love? You know what I'm going to say, yes and no. Paul of Tarsus' disciples wrote and preached in favor of slavery and insisted on misogynist practice, and we have only to look around us to see the variation of what is considered to be love, and what do we mean when we say we are answering the call of love. Palestinians fight against occupation. Jews all over the world remember millions killed in the Shoah, the Holocaust. Coptic Christians in northern Africa and in Israel-Palestine grow fewer and fewer every year. The attacker in Brussels was Muslim and is said to have called out the call to prayer, God is great, Allahu Akbar, as he bombed the train station. The young woman killed in a fit of road rage by a man in Fairfax, Virginia, was in a robe she borrowed from her mother to go to Ramadan prayers on Friday. She tripped and fell and was killed. Here in Portland, or nearby in Portland, I'm not exactly sure where the line is. I haven't been in Gresham before. We know what happened. Da'i Abdullah, whom I've mentioned, is now one of very few widely known openly queer imams, though Jamila Tharp, who I mentioned before, she is too. I have been privileged to hear him sing out Allahu Akbar, the call to prayer. How different it sounds coming from him. And he is denounced the world over by conservative and very traditional Muslims and called a false Muslim, a false prophet, a false teacher. I admire him so much. I admire him so much. Religion is complicated. We want to be Unitarian Universalists, a religion of love, justice and peace among the peoples of earth. And the thing is that UUs and many Muslims, especially those with progressive social values, have so much in common. So much so, in fact, that some Muslims come to our congregations looking for a welcome that they find a little cool. Why do they come? And why do they so often not stay? They come or they become interested in us because the values of Islam are often understood to be consistent with UU values. In fact, here's a story for you. I was once in a swimming pool swimming laps where I met an African Muslim man, and I'm thinking, boy, my head sure isn't covered. And I'm wearing a bathing suit, and I'm feeling suddenly a little anxious. Oh, look at those stereotypes popping right up. What is he thinking of me? He asked me my religion, and I said, I'm a Unitarian Universalist. And he laughed, and he said, oh, you're like us. My eyes must have shown my surprise. He said, there is one, but he has many names. I thought to myself, well, as usual, it's a little more complicated in Unitarian Universalism, but the moment of relationship seemed to me what was most important. Progressive Muslims often see in our teachings that there are as many paths to a one as there are individuals and people. There is in Islam also a teaching that is mitigated sometimes by local practice, that there must be no compulsion in religion, and that reason, our human gift, must be used to decide what we think about religion. So many spiritually inclined Muslims who may not be particularly religiously observant in Islam are very drawn to Unitarian Universalism. They feel a resonance with the tolerance, plurality in oneness, and overall theology that has stayed with them since childhood and that exists for many in Unitarian Universalism. But some of us, when we receive them, do as I did. We rely on stereotypes. We undermine our own conviction of the value, the worth, the dignity of those who practice religions we may not know well. And that impedes our welcoming and including other people. We do not acknowledge always the place we have in the interconnected web, right? Our seventh principle that talks about the interconnected web of existence includes, in my view, an interdependent web of religions and of peoples. We do not always see how closely Islam is braided into our Judeo-Christian heritage. For example, the poem I read was about who? It was about Jesus. And Jesus is mentioned in the Quran and in Hadith, which are authoritative stories in Islam. Jesus is mentioned in those two texts together more frequently than in the New Testament. Adam, Noah, Moses, and Abraham are all important prophets in the Muslim tradition. So I invite you to investigate the organization Muslims for Progressive Values, of which Jamila Tharp is a member. They encourage interfaith understanding and relationship. Muslims for Progressive Values encourage people to understand Islam by listening to Muslim stories asking questions in a spirit of friendly curiosity. For example, when I asked my friend in 9th grade, "Oh, do you speak Arabic?" She said, "No, I'm from Pakistan." She knew she would eventually read Arabic and learn to read the Quran in Arabic. But she said, "I don't speak Arabic. I'm from Pakistan," and now I can't remember. Not Farsi, Urdu. She spoke Urdu. And I had never heard of Urdu. But because of her story, I'm here now. I asked Phyllis to tell you the story of Khadijah. And I invite you to read, perhaps, the book, The Muslim Jesus, which is a collection of traditional tales in which Jesus of Nazareth and his mother Mary figure prominently. And of course, to read the gorgeous melodic music of Rumi and of Hafiz, the most well-known Sufi mystics. Remember that the pillars of Islam are not only part of the lives of observant, conservative Muslims. They are also the pillars for observant, progressive Muslims, for spiritual but not religious Muslims. I invite you to consider the fact that these 5 pillars live in the hearts of 1.6 billion people in the world who are known to identify as Muslim. And are they so different, Muslims, from the complex peoples in other faiths? We are all complex and beautiful, as Annie Dillard writes. We are all terrifying, ambiguous, and multiple, and frankly contradictory, all of us religious people. And I will tell you something. People say Unitarian Universalism is kind of a made-up religion and you can believe whatever you want, right? You've heard this probably. Religion is made up. Religion is something people and civilizations have created and that we need, I think, many of us. So may we embrace these thoughts, these realities today, and embrace our Muslim siblings and cousins into our communities, starting from now. Let it be so. Let it be so.
I think we have time for a little bit of discussion. So I'll
Yes.
bring.
Oh, you're going to bring a microphone.
I
Yeah.
have a question.
Okay, just a moment. Wait a minute.
Do I need the mic?
You do.
If she told me I needed it, you need it.
Okay. You talk about the 5 pillars a lot, but what are they?
What are they? I know, I'm sorry. I actually accidentally skipped that paragraph. They are first the profession of faith, right? There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet. Fasting, particularly during Ramadan. Regular prayer, often 5 times a day, by observant Muslims. The giving to charitable organizations, and the Hajj, or the journey to Mecca. Those are the 5 pillars of the tradition. Thank you so much. You rescued me from myself.
Any other questions or comments? Oh.
Oh, I was going to just ask you to mention again, you referred to a couple of books. And-
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There is this book called The Gift. The Gift by Hafiz. You know it? There's another book of his poems called The Subject Tonight is Love. That is, whew, I love it. It's beautiful. Also, The Muslim Jesus is another book. And if you're interested in just a history of Islam or more information about Muslim practice, Karen Armstrong, whom you may know, has a book. Also, John Esposito has a book called The Straight Path, which is another name for Islam.
Would you recommend these books for, like, let's say someone's entire family watches Fox News? Some sort of resource.
For the family or for the person in the family?
Something to give them to have more
to
info.
calm down. I'm sorry. We all fail. Speaking of stereotypes.
It's true.
So not you. I own my own confession. What would I recommend? The Karen Armstrong book is pretty straightforward and she's not Muslim. Her sort of religious position is that if your religion makes you more compassionate, she's down, right? That's good for her. So that might be a good one. There's also one that you could sneak in there, also by Karen Armstrong, called The Battle for God, which is about fundamentalism in Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So that there could be a little tension, maybe, but it's put in a larger context, so it might work.
I mean, even like the simplest overview of, yes, there's more than one type and all that.
Yeah, the Karen Armstrong book then.
What's the name of that book?
I don't know. I think it might just be called A History of Islam or just Islam. It's a very simple title by Karen Armstrong.
Thank you. I'll let you know how that goes.
Please do. You can find me at thewayoftheriver.com.
Okay, thank you. And now if you would join us in singing hymn number 159. This is my song, O God of all nations. Please rise as the Spirit moves you.
As we extinguish this chalice, I invite us to recall our mission of love and of welcome. As in all things in the household of earth, we embrace for a while and then let go. The wheel turns. We come and we leave. We are here now, and we will go from this place in peace, and I hope we will return in love. Amen.
I loved your choices. Thanks, Michael.
You know, we got her on MP3. Really? Yeah, we got her on the. I got the entire thing, including the. In fact, we're recording right now. I got the back on MP3, which is cooler, I think, because making access to the video is much more difficult. Oh, I'll go back and turn that off and cut a copy for her. Didn't you tell me she wanted one?